All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of Texans Unfiltered, a Houston football podcast for your Houston Texans. I am YoungAriGold, and what a weekend we had. Tons of news. Everybody's still flying, high right now with everything that's going on with the Texans. The announcement of Demeco Ryans, the interviews that happened over the weekend. I think Demeco did two interviews. He was on Rich Eisen. He was on Good Morning Football. Nick Casserio did an interview with Sean and Seth on 610 on Friday. And there's been a ton of, the Texans have really hopped hopped on this train and just are continuing to, create and build off the momentum that has already been established. And it's awesome to see. What a great place to be. I mean, to wake up knowing that the Texans are going in the right direction and they've made the necessary adjustments to continue down this path. And it's still one of those things where until the wins happen, this is a great feeling. But still, right now, this feeling is awesome. And they got it right. They got it right, and it's not something we can say has happened over the last 4 years, however long it's been. Whenever the Chiefs game happened, that seems to be the last time. So, um, but yeah, so still riding the high, still feeling good, which is all we can ask for right now. It's only February, still got the Super Bowl to go. A bunch of news will be coming our way. They're still working on the assistant coaches. The tight end coach from the New England Patriots that we interviewed for the offensive coordinator position has taken the same position with the Los Angeles Rams. So anybody that was worried about Patriots South continuing here, that seems to be gone now. So he'll be going to the Rams. So Bobby Slowick and Troy Walters seem to be the two leading candidates for the offensive coordinator position. Haven't heard a lot about the defensive coordinator position. I'm still hoping that we go down the path of having a defensive coordinator instead of just having Demeco call plays. I really want a head coach that is overseeing everything, and really isn't hands on, but not calling plays, implementing the defensive plan, game plan for the week, scheme, things of that nature. I mean, scheme's fine as long as you have a DC that can execute. But I'm assuming we'll start to hear a little bit more about that. A lot of things are going on behind uh, the curtain that we're just not privy to at this time. There's still, I'm sure there's been conversations with assistant coaches and things of the such that just haven't been announced. I think OC and DC are probably the top two that are going to get a ton of coverage, but outside of that, not going to get a lot of things. You're not going to get too much about, the assistant wide receivers coach or the assistant DBs coach or a DBs coach or things of that nature. Hopefully the Texans are able to retain Frank Ross. I know Frank Ross was uh, instrumental in special teams last year, and I know that Nick fought to get Frank Ross here. So I would assume Frank Ross will still be the special teams coach, but it'll take, I would assume here probably by the end of the week, we'll start to have an understanding of a clearer picture of basically what's happening with the coaching staff and how it's looking. So just be patient. We'll continue to get news. As we get news, I'll continue to bring it up to you guys. But I wanted to talk about Nick Casserio and the completely different person that we've seen from Nick since Thursday's press conference. A lot of people, and I've been critical of Nick as far as the word salad and things of that nature, but I also think the situation Nick inherited isn't really one that you can go back and turn to page 32 of NFL history and say, "Oh, okay, so here's how the Raiders handled this situation." I mean, the situation was, you know, one of a million. It's not something that a GM walks into very often. And you don't walk into 26 sexual assault allegations by your franchise quarterback. No draft capital, no cap space. I can't get a coach. Like you just there isn't a playbook that Nick can execute because he's having to kind of figure it out on his own. And this seems to always be left out when we talk about Nick Caserio. There's lots of chatter in like as the season ended, or even at the beginning of the season, that Nick is on the hot seat. It's something I never believed, because I think internally and within the organization, they have a true understanding of where they were, and I believe Nick pitched a plan on what it's going to take to get to where they want to go. And we all had to suffer through it. And that seems to be the part that people really just don't like. You know, this city has had an understanding of rebuild, and we've seen it with the Astros. So you would think that Texans fans would have somewhat of an understanding of what a rebuild looks like, and how it can take some time, and that there's certain things you need to do to be able to get to the point to where the Texans are at right now and where Nick Casserio is at right now. It's not just boom, all right, we hired the GM, now it's time to really get things going. That's just not how it works. And especially with this situation, you also had the preacher that was involved in so many other aspects of the organization that shouldn't have been, had the supposedly had the ear of the owner, things like that. So now Nick is in a place where the salary cap is cleaned up. Draft picks are back. Got a haul for Deshaun Watson. Went through 2 years with two different coaches and was able to add some pieces, whether it be free agency or draft. Really, if you look at the draft, there's really some core pieces on this team that people don't think about. And they're good. There's also some really good building blocks. It's not a team overloaded with talent in any form or fashion, but this team's in a decent spot. And now Nick is showing his personality. He's making jokes during the press conference. He's when he's interviewing with Sean and Seth. I don't feel too different about the way he interviews with Sean and Seth. I think if anybody's ever listened to Sean and Seth's interviews with Nick Casserio, they're always extremely organic. Nick's personality shows quite a bit in those past interviews. But this last Friday, seemed to be a lot more involved. You could just get a sense of calmness from Nick. You could get a sense of heading in the right direction, him being happy about where they're at, and he's giving you more insight into things that previously he was not giving you insight into. The word salad aspect. When anytime he was asked a question, it would always be like 150 words that really said nothing. It's kind of the Patriots way to an extent. Now we're at a place where he's talking about a lot of different things, and he's a little bit more open. And I think transparency has really been where the Texans have been wanting to go and where they're going. The last 3 years, what are they gonna do? Cal's gonna come up to the mic at a press conference and be like, "Yeah, I made a mistake hiring Jack Easterby. I made a mistake empowering Bill O'Brien. I made a mistake signing off on the DeAndre Hopkins trade." Like, what is that going to do? It's going to do nothing. But if they can be transparent, like they've been through this process, whether it's the head coaching, whether it's the uniforms, whether it's during the interviews and talking about where this team is at and where they want to go, there's a vision. There's a vision now. And I also think a lot of where the optimism and internal happiness is coming for Nick Caserio is the fact that he has a smart football guy that he can relate to, that he can have conversations with, that share the vision, understand where they want to go, and want to do it together. There's chemistry. If you just look at the words he used when talking about Demeco compared to the words he used when talking about David Coley or Lovie Smith, they're completely different. During the press conference, he was talking about, he'd make a joke like, could you get a better answer? Like, listen to that guy speak. Like, those are all things that we were missing. We didn't have that. And now we do. And now when we're hearing Nick Casserio speak, he's talking about everything you want to hear from your general manager. There's no more hiding. It is what it is at this point. We're going to talk about it, 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 to talk about it. We'll get Okay, there we go. We're back with that. Let's see if we can get back to my good webcam. Sorry about that, guys. Not sure what's happening. I had a little technical difficulty. Now I'm on my stupid MacBook camera. I hate this camera. I have no idea what's going on. I have the Roadcaster going in the back, and it's picking me up, but for some reason, it is not being picked up here, and I don't know why. I'm sorry. Anyways, yeah, so there's a ton of excitement. Lots of different things happening within the organization. God, the audio is going to suck now. I hate that. Anyways, so yeah, with Nick and everything that he's doing, it seems to really be what Texans fans are looking for and what they want to be excited about. As we continue to have these conversations, we continue to see what Nick's vision is and how it is shared with Demeco and how they're going to execute. It's just a really good place to be in. It's exciting again to be a fan. Audio coming in just fine. Thanks, Edgar. Appreciate it. Not it's just coming from the computer, which sucks. To spend the money on a mic and all that stuff and not be able to use it, not ideal. But thank you, I appreciate it. So yeah, so glad to know that we're on that. Glad to see that Nick's opening up. We're starting to see the personality. We're starting to see everything that he's looking for, which is awesome. We haven't gotten any of that. And now to kind of where we're at with the some of the interviews. So there seem to be some parts of whether it be the Rich Eisen interview, Good Morning Football interview, or even the press conference. There seems to be a name. There's a boogeyman that Demeco Ryans is intentionally not using when speaking about the quarterback position. And I'm pretty sure everybody can understand who the boogeyman is. And that's Davis Mills. Anytime he's been asked about Davis Mills, it's we have a quarterback on the roster. We're going to add to that. It's never, we have Davis Mills in the quarterback room right now. We're going to be adding some more, we'll be adding additional players, whether it be through free agency or the draft. Time will tell as we go through this process. But right now, with where we're at, right now we have Davis Mills. And I think a lot of people are reading on both sides are reading too much into him saying we're going to add players to the room. We're going to, do these things. Davis is, or the quarterback is on we have one. I think both sides are overreacting completely to some of the statements that have been made. I don't think it goes towards, hey, we're drafting a quarterback. And I don't think it goes towards, hey, Davis Mills is going to be a starter. I think both sides are reaching. It is smoke season. Like, you have to keep in mind right now, as we're going towards the draft, that a lot of things are going to be said to favor, or they think what they say will favor potentially what the Texans are going to try to do, whether it be free agency or offseason or in the draft. I wouldn't put too much thought into it. Like I said, on both sides, whether you're a Davis Mills truther, which for some reason I'm tagged as, or the crowd that wants to draft Bryce Young, or draft a quarterback in general. Either way, I don't know if I'd put too much stock into some of the things that you're hearing. Some of the other stuff was talking about the offense and spacing and talking about the Shanahan style of offense and wanted to bring something similar over. The hearing Demeco speak about offense is a lot different than hearing it from other defensive head coaches. Like, he was really able to speak a lot about offense and what he's seen in the past to be able to give us insight into what he envisions and how, and also get us excited about where this offense potentially could be, right? Take the quarterback position out right now, because honestly, we don't know what it's going to look like or how it's going to be, who's going to be the starter. At this point, it really doesn't matter. If you look at what the Niners have done just over the 3 years, it's really like insert quarterback, be successful because we have a ton of talent everywhere on the roster. Maybe that's the route. Either way, it doesn't matter. But with the offense, it really is. It works in a lot. It's all about spacing. It's all about yak yards. It's all about creating plays, getting the ball into the hand of the playmakers, like Demeco said at the press conference, and letting them just do what they need to do. And we haven't been in a position where that's been something that we've been able to do. And when you watch the Niners offense, there's a lot of talk about Brock Purdy. And don't get me wrong, the story is amazing. Mr. Irrelevant to 7-game winning streak to NFC Championship, all that. It's a great storyline. It's not something we will see, again for a while, at least from like Mr. Irrelevant or things like that. But he's throwing to wide open Greg Kittle. He's throwing to wide open Christian McCaffrey. He's throwing to wide open Debo Samuel. He's throwing wide open to Brandon Ayuk. Like when you are able to work in space and you have guys who can create on their own, it gives you an advantage over the defense. And it also gives you the opportunity to have a serviceable / manageable quarterback that can put you in a position to win. They can also lose you the game, and which I think we saw in the NFC Championship. I also just think that the Eagles are extremely talented from the secondary all the way down to the defensive line. And then when you flip the book or flip the page and you go to the offense, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goedert, like great offensive line. That's going to be a tough one to overcome, especially given that you're starting Mr. Irrelevant. But it's interesting to think like that type of offense here in Houston, and we saw it with Gary Kubiak. Like if you just go back and watch Kubiak's offense, which is this same offense, there's maybe more of a heavy emphasis on the run game than there has been in the little Shanny offense. But it's all spacing. Look at Andre Johnson. I mean, did you ever watch Andre and say to yourself, like, damn, how is he always wide open? Like, how is he always wide open? Like, and it's a combination of things. It's play calling and scheme, but then it's also like great route running by Andre. Andre was a great route runner. And so when you take what you've seen from the Niners offense and you look at the Texans and you think, we need to implement that. Right now, they're missing those skill players. Even Dameon Pierce, right? Dameon Pierce he's not dangerous with the ball in his hand in the passing game. I mean, he's above average in every way. He's a bruiser. He's going to get 5 to 10 yards from just lowering his shoulder and continuing because his contact balance is probably one of, I don't know if I've seen a running back in the last 15 years that has the contact balance that Dameon Pierce has. It's really interesting. So yeah, Brandon Cooks, who, for some reason this weekend I watched every single game again on the All 22, and was just looking at Davis Mills throws, and man, Brandon Cooks, when he was on for the first, he just looked a lot better. That offense looked a lot better when Brandon Cooks was playing. And then when you add the fact that you had Nico Collins, who did miss some time, but prior to him going down, he started to, was Nico turning a corner in his development? And I think he was. He looks like a much crisper route runner. But yeah, when you look at this team right now, not a ton of talent on the offensive side of the ball, not a lot of playmakers, not a lot of guys that can create. And you need that in this offense. Now, are they going to be able to add that? Yeah, they will. We have all the draft capital in the world to be able to add pieces. It doesn't have to be. I keep seeing this battle of all offense, all defense. It really can be a nice combination of the two. You could grab a nice defensive tackle while also grabbing your quarterback if that's where you want to go, or grab a defensive tackle or edge guy and grab a wide receiver like Jordan Addison who can create in space, tinier but shiftier quarterback or wide receiver compared to some of the others. Not a big guy, not going to go up and moss you, but get him in open space and he's going to make something happen. You also have Zay Flowers. You have Dell from the U of H. Lots of wide receivers in this. Marvel. You have Mims. There's some talent. It's not like the best wide receiving class that we've had in the draft, but it's a talented group. But this offense, little pieces here and there, when, sign something, like a DJ Shark in the offseason, that actually be a decent piece. That's a player that can create in space, has a lot of speed, is shifty, can make people miss. Adding that yak yards to the open space is really what it's about. And it's just nice to hear a defensive head coach think about that offense and be able to explain and paint the picture of what he'd like the offense to look like. And, when it comes to football or defense and what he's looking for, obviously the sound bites are going to be, we're looking for JJ Watts, right? And I think anybody would be looking for a JJ Watt-esque player, right? And when he says that, he's not talking about, Hall of Fame guy. He's looking for a guy that puts in the work, is extremely talented, great man off the field, and is able to do his job at a high level, like JJ Watt, right? And there's if there was a prototype that you wanted from a player perspective, I would say JJ Watt, whether it be offense or defense, that type of player is ideal for any team. So, yeah, it's really, it's still this interesting piece. We're still in this interesting part of the offseason where there's a ton of excitement, but I'm really excited to see this coaching staff. I'm excited to see what we do in free agency. Free agency, I think, is about a month away. Uh, even Sunday, right? Like Sunday or Monday is a day where whenever the 15th is, when is that? Wednesday? I think the 11th, 12th, 13th. Yeah, Wednesday. So Wednesday is February 15th, which is the day that the Alex Patel, my buddy, I miss you, bro. The 15th is the day that Derek Carr is guaranteed to grab his guaranteed money for 2023. The Raiders have to make a decision from a trade perspective by the 15th, even though they can't officially make a trade until the offseason begins, which I believe is March 1st, or the new league year begins. I think it's March 1st or something around that time. Or they cut David Carr or Derek Carr, and he's able to go where he wants to go. But that's going to be an interesting piece. Where do Nick and Demeco want to go? Do they want to draft a guy? Are they in love with a quarterback in this draft? If they are, then they're going to go grab him. If they're not in love with a quarterback in this draft, or they have a different philosophy for team building and building out this roster, are they interested in signing a Derek Carr? I am of the proponent that I like Derek Carr enough, or I think he's talented enough to where bringing Derek Carr in really kind of puts you in a pretty good position from a roster perspective. He's not going to be the long-term answer. You'll likely win 8 to 9 games. Well, I say 8 to 9 games. I think 8 to 9 games is possible. I think winning the division is possible, even with the way the roster is currently constructed, because I do think good coaching outweighs the lack of talent on a roster, because good coaching can maximize talent, right? Me and Figgy were on Twitter the other day talking about, where, just this team in general, and developing is a philosophy. It's a culture. It's something that you build internally and becomes organic. And it's something you commit to. It's not a catchphrase. It's not something you could say in a press conference to win people over. If you're going to actually develop, it's a full commitment from every coach on the staff, from Nick Casserio, from anybody in upper management. You have to put your effort into developing these players. You have to maximize their strengths while also masking their weaknesses. And I think that Demeco has the ability to do it. It's something he's done as a player, and it's something he did in San Francisco as the defensive coordinator. To think that he can do that here, it's interesting because this team isn't too far away, right? Like if you look at the core pieces of this roster, we'll start on offense. Left tackle, secured. Right tackle, secured. Left guard, Kenyon Green. He had a rough rookie year, but honestly, watching the all 22 I was in real estate school all weekend. It was virtual. I didn't pay a lick of attention because it was just a renewal for me. But so while I was doing that, I was watching all 22 and making clips. And Kenyon Green didn't have as bad of a year as people think. it's really hard to be a rookie guard in this league when you have a trash center. Like when your center is not very good and you're having to, one from a communication perspective, two from a blocking perspective, you're taking on more responsibilities as a guard. You don't really have anybody to lean on because that center is just really kind of filling a spot. It's not like he's there to anchor that middle of the offensive line because he can't. It's really hard as a rookie to develop in that. And Kenyon was really good in the run game, especially, early on in the season. He wasn't great in pass pro. In moments he was blown up, but those are all things that can be taught and developed. Kenyon has the tape to be a solid guard in this league. So when you look at the offensive line, you have the tackles and the guard, and let's just, for this exercise, let's say that Kenyon does develop. Kenyon does end up, going down the right path and becoming a Pro Bowl left guard, maybe an All Pro, who knows? But let's just say, or a good left guard. You have to fix that center spot. You have to fix that. Honestly, that right guard position you have to fix. And I see a lot of people talking about cutting AJ Cann. If you can't upgrade from AJ Cann, I think you keep AJ Cann. Towards the end of the season, he had some pretty good moments, and things started to click a little bit more. I think you probably keep him. If anybody follows Brandon Thorne or watches his YouTube channel, he talks when AJ Cann was signed by the Texans. He talked a lot about all the tape that AJ Cann has put on from Jacksonville and how successful he was and how good he was, and did a film breakdown. And it wasn't as bad as people think. So if you can't upgrade it, keep AJ Cann. Now you look at tight end, don't have any real pieces. I'm a Jordan Akins fan. I don't think anybody else is a huge Jordan Akins fan, but Akins has, in my opinion, I think Akins can really be a guy. I think you can also draft one. But anyways, sorry, I'm getting on a tangent here. Was going through the whole roster. So let's go back to the pieces. Left tackle, right tackle, left guard. Okay. Those are on the offensive line. You have those three locked down. Dameon Pierce, running back. Yeah, you're number one. Can he be a 30 to 35 carry guy? I don't know. The way he runs, probably not ideal for your main back to take 30 to 35 carries a game and just continue to lower his shoulder and take a beating. You'd like to offset that, but you still have a consistent performer at running back. Wide receiver, you don't have one. And tight end, you don't really have one. So on the offensive side of the ball, your core pieces are left tackle, right tackle, guard, running back. Now let's go to the defensive side of the ball. So from the secondary down. So you have Jalen Petrie, who obviously we all know, an anchor on that defense, somebody that's going to continue to develop. He'll clean up those missed tackles. And he was a ball hawk. I mean, he had 5 interceptions last year. He's going to continue to develop. That guy's a player. Last guy you probably need to worry about in the secondary. Going down to the cornerback, Derek Stingley. We saw why Derek Stingley was taken 3rd overall. A ton of talent, misused in our system completely. Wasn't really put in a position to succeed, which goes back to development, goes back to Demeco's philosophy about putting his players in positions to succeed on the field. Playing zone all day is not you're not taking advantage of what Derek Stingley is as a corner. So you have Derek Stingley, who's going to be better and be playing cornerback the way he knows how to play cornerback. So Petrie, Stingley. On the defensive line or linebacker, let's go. Christian Harris. I know there's a lot of talk about Christian Harris. There's a lot of comparisons like, oh, he's going to be our next, the next Fred Warner. He's going to be Greenlaw. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. I think he can be a very good player, but like those comparisons, probably not a fair comparison for Christian Harris to be put into. I think he has the ability to be a very good linebacker. I think Demeco will definitely get the most out of him, but you have a young guy to build on, and you hope that if he can be developed, he can be a guy. I'd call him a piece. I wouldn't call him a huge building block on this roster, right? I wouldn't call him somebody that you're going to point to and say that guy can be it. I think he can be, but at this moment, we haven't really seen enough to say like that's the guy in the linebacker room.
Then you go to the defensive line. Jonathan Grenard, awesome piece, great piece, continuing to develop. He's kind of developed on his own. He's continued to develop on his own. He's continuing to become a player. I really like Grenard. Then you have, and those are the pieces. Now you have Ogabu, or I always forget how to say his name, but the guy we signed from the Rams last year, he flashed, looked like a really solid piece. Young guy, can continue to be developed. He's a free agent this year. Hopefully, Nick signs him, and we can keep him and continue. So you have really core pieces. You're just missing skill players on the offensive side of the ball. You're missing secondary, or I'm sorry, you're missing wide receivers. You're missing tight ends. On the defensive side, you are okay. You have enough pieces to field a competitive roster on Sunday, which is ultimately what you're looking for. Malik Collins can suit up and play. Jerry Hughes looked great last year. That was in Lovey's system. Probably not the best coaching for him to get, but he was a veteran, so he's able to do it. Look at Steven Nelson. Probably had his career year here in Houston, opposite of Stingley. Put him back. Desmond King has been pretty good. Oko Ronku. Okay, there we go. So that was the guy from the Rams that I messed up. Appreciate you guys breaking down the syllables for me. Also, I don't really read a lot of names. It's just not, I don't know. So you're missing the skill players, right? You're probably missing another corner, but you can deal with Nelson and Stingley and King, even Tremont Smith, if he's signed back. And so Cashman has stepped up really well. There, good rotational pieces. There are good rotational pieces throughout this roster. I guess that's my point. But the foundation pieces, the Petries, the Stingleys, the Pierces, the Tunsels, the Howards, the Kenyon Greens, the Jonathan Grenards, those are guys, like, that's enough to be able to continue to build, right? You have the pieces, given the free cap space, given the draft capital that you have, you can build this roster out pretty quickly. Actually, I'll hold off on that. But the team is in a really good spot. They need a defensive tackle extremely bad. They need a star edge guy. They need a Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter. Do you value a quarterback over those two? That's another conversation for another day. I'd rather build the defense. I think a lot of people just want a quarterback. I totally get it. Deshaun Burns, you guys, you want to replace him. I honestly can't fault you for that. But yeah, so when you look at it, there's a ton of talent here. There's a ton of opportunity to really get going. And, I think there's a ton of optimism within the building because we're able to do that. And when you listen to Meco speak in these interviews over the weekend and you listen to Nick speak, there's a ton of alignment, which is something that's been lacking. They're both excited. They're both passionate. They're both football guys. And, it's a really good position to be in. And you have to capitalize on it, but there's no reason to think that Nick and Demeco won't. So, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on some of the interviews. When you look at the assistant, when you look at the OC, I know Bobby Slowick and Troy Walters right now are the top two candidates. So just wanted to bring that up. They have interviewed for the positions. We'll see how those things come out and if they're signed this week. Should be. I would expect some real news on the assistant coaches to come out this week. Make sure you guys are following, Patrick Storm, Aaron Wilson. Those guys are going to keep you in the loop when it comes to the assistant coaches. But yeah, other than that, it's Monday. So definitely got to get to the grind, 9:01. But go through some of these comments real quick. All right. Yeah, technical issues. Matthew, my bad, man. I'm glad you're super excited for the Texans going forward. I just hope we hold off on getting a quarterback this year. Yeah, no, I am in that same sentiment. Like, that's the sentiment I share. I don't want a quarterback this year. Let me rephrase. If there was a quarterback, like Anthony Richardson is probably the only quarterback that I would be interested in taking this year. And he isn't the best quarterback in the draft, like right now, like day one plug in start. He's not the guy. Bryce Young is definitely the best quarterback in the draft. But Bryce Young is also 5'10", 190. He's looking to add 25 pounds and has hired a dietitian and a nutritionist. When you have to do that's concerning to me, especially when you look at his frame. I mean, his frame is a fragile looking frame. He's not thick in his hips or his thighs or his, calves. His upper body isn't thick at all. I mean, he's 190 in the sense of like your normal guy that you would go to high school or college with 190. And so adding that weight, like, what is that going to take away from his game? Everybody says, "Oh, you can add weight." Yeah, you can add weight. It's not a discussion about can you add weight. It's a discussion of if you're adding 25 to 30 pounds, what aspects of your game are you potentially taking away by adding that? So with Bryce, it only comes down to his frame for me. I think his arm is average. I think it's serviceable. I think he has enough arm to be successful in this league. I don't think it's elite in any form or fashion. And I just wonder with his game, can it translate to the NFL? A little bit. I'm only concerned about a little bit. The NFL is a lot faster. Decisions have to be made a lot quicker. The hits are a lot harder. That scrambling and creating plays in college, yeah, it's a lot different when you're going against NFL talent every play, every week. It's not like on Sundays where, you have, sometimes you'll go play, just a bad college team. So those are my biggest issues. Like, are those plays going to translate to the NFL? They could, and I think he's super talented. And I know people think I'm a Bryce Young hater. I'm not a Bryce Young hater. I'm just not in the camp of like, let's take a quarterback because we need to take a quarterback. I think it's honestly lazy, and that's really where I think it's lazy. I think people just don't dive in and look at the roster and look at Bryce Young. He's celebrated in college, but there are a ton of people that have concerns about what he did in college and if it can translate. So I'm not a fan, but I like Anthony Richardson. He's a developmental guy. He's an athletic freak. It's going to take time. It's not day one plug in. It's going to take a ton of time. You're going to have to, add resources to support him and support his development. But I think he has the highest ceiling. It's just, are you willing to wait? And maybe the Texans are in a position where they're willing to wait. I would rather get a bridge quarterback until the rest of the team is close enough. Yeah, and there's two sides to this. I agree, but also, you bring up, everybody brings up the Colts and the Commanders. Are you going to be in QB purgatory? I think it's a stupid phrase, to be honest with you. None of those teams have done what they can to try to draft a quarterback. Instead, they continue to trade assets throughout the league to grab other guys that may work, and none of them have. Carson Wentz hasn't worked. Phillip Rivers didn't work. Matt Ryan didn't work. Like, none of these quarterbacks are working. They could trade up. They could go grab a quarterback. They choose not to. They're in QB purgatory because of their decisions. They're not there because it's not like either team has won a ton of games and is in the playoffs and running. They're not picking at 29. They're picking at this year the Colts are picking at 4. But, in the top 10, maybe top 15, either way, like, you can still add assets and go get your guy. I think the QB purgatory takes are fucking lazy and dumb. I think anybody that talks about that shit is just stupid, to be honest with you. Anybody that says anything about QB purgatory is an idiot. That's all there is to it. You're dumb. You're not looking at the entire situation. You listen to whoever talks and you just let them form your opinion. It's honestly, it's stupid. It's extremely ignorant, and people shouldn't be able to talk football when they talk about those two teams, and those are the examples they use. Davis Mills is the truth. I don't know if he's the truth. I think that's kind of the issue with me. I don't know if he's the truth. I don't think you can truly evaluate Davis Mills and what he is based on the last 2 years, because the roster's been trash. The coaching has been trash. He didn't have an interior offensive line. Like, the interior offensive line in 2021 was even worse. There's so many unknowns that, like, I don't know if he's the truth. I don't know if he's trash. I think he has some good moments. I think he has some bad moments. If he had some talent, could those good moments be more consistent? I don't know. I like Davis Mills. I've seen some good. I just don't know if we can get it consistently. Bryce Young or Mills will be the quarterback. I can't see us taking any other quarterback at 2. Okay, maybe. Quentin Johnson. Yeah, he's a guy in space. That's the type of guy you want. Does Demeco, being a Bama guy, affect the BY? Not really. I mean, he can tap into his resource of Nick Saban and, anybody else he knows on the coaching staff. The film is the film, though, whether those guys have something to say or don't. If they buy into the film, then, BY will be the guy. Ben Powers at right guard. That would be awesome. Don't you do Nelson dirty? I didn't. I thought did enough come back next year. I don't know what that means. So sorry. Need a nose tackle to help to stop the run. Yep, a one tech Mike and strong safety. Yeah, that would be amazing. Free agent priority versus draft focus areas. Yeah, free agent priority and draft. Honestly, the philosophy is the same for both. If I'm Nick, it's the trenches, the trenches, the trenches. If you can add a couple pieces on at wide receiver, great. If you can add a linebacker, fantastic. But I'm building the interior of the offensive line. I'm building the defensive line, and I'm getting because you win games in those two areas. If you can get those two fixed and it be a long-term solution, you could start to plug and play other pieces. The quarterback is still going to be a top need, but you gotta love the guy to take the guy. You gotta love the guy. Trenches in free agency, skill players and draft. Yeah, that works for me. Next year we in cap heaven. Yeah, I think over 100 million is spent. Saxonville built their defense quickly through free agency, and Jalen Ramsey then crumbled away pretty quick. They did. They also missed on a quarterback. I think they missed on two quarterbacks. So, that doesn't help. When you do that, and when you're in a position to draft a quarterback off of desperation, that's the type of shit that happens. Tomlinson from Vikings would be a good free. I agree with you, and Ben Powers would be amazing. What's with Arian Foster and NFL being scripted? Nah, I don't put any stock in that. He was just joking around. Bozeman would be a great center get. Anthony Richardson, best bet right now at 33. Russell, I don't see him waiting all the way. He can't last until 33, in my opinion. The physical traits that he has, he's an athletic freak. It is not going to be something that that is not the type of player to last until the second round. He's just off the charts when it comes to that stuff. Do you even want to fuck with BY by putting muscle on him? Yeah, that's the thing. Like, anyone remember David Boston putting on weight and running? No, I don't remember that. But yeah, for me, that's the thing. What are you taking away from his game? It's just not as simple as adding weight. He's going to become slower. There's just other pieces to it. And, I don't know. But all right, guys, I got to hop. It's Monday. Mondays are my craziest day at work. And I'm over. But I appreciate you guys. I hope you guys like, subscribe. Sorry about the technical issues. Still trying to work on kind of the setup, but I'll continue to work on that. Tell your friends to tell a friend about Texans Unfiltered. I have some other things coming as well. I appreciate you guys and everything you do. With that being said, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And I'll see you guys Wednesday.